It was almost midnight when I got on the last bus home. I was 23 years old, exhausted after another late shift at work. My feet ached, and all I wanted was to get home, take a shower, and go straight to bed. I paid the driver, walked to the back, and took a window seat. The engine hummed softly as we drove through the dark streets, stopping every few blocks. The old fluorescent lights flickered every now and then. Across the aisle sat an older man. He looked about 60, gray hair, a worn brown jacket. He smiled as I sat down. "Long day?" he asked. I laughed. "You can tell?" He nodded. "Only people leaving work look that tired." I smiled. "What about you?" "Oh, I visit my daughter every Thursday." He looked out the window. "She still worries if I travel home too late." I chuckled. "My mom's exactly the same." The old man laughed. "Mothers never stop worrying." For a while, neither of us spoke. The bus rolled through the empty highway. Most of the passengers stared at their phones. Outside, nothing but darkness. Then the old man suddenly leaned closer to the window. His smile disappeared. "That's strange." I looked at him. "What is?" He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly pointed toward the trees. "Do you see that?" I pressed my face against the glass. At first, nothing. Then I saw it. Far beyond the headlights, something was moving between the trees. It looked impossibly tall. Its arms hung almost to the ground. It was keeping up with the bus. The old man whispered, "That shouldn't be possible." I looked toward the speedometer above the driver, 50 miles per hour. The old man slowly sat back in his seat. His face had gone pale. "Don't look at it anymore." I frowned. "Why?" He kept his eyes fixed on the floor. "Because sometimes it notices when you notice it." I looked away from the window. My heart was pounding. Nobody else on the bus seemed to care. A teenager kept scrolling through his phone. A woman near the front had fallen asleep. The driver continued humming to the music. It was as if only the two of us could see it. A few moments later, the bus stopped. There wasn't a bus stop, just an empty stretch of road. The doors slowly folded open. No one got on. No one got off. The driver didn't say a word. He simply stared straight ahead. Then, the old man grabbed my wrist. "Don't move." I looked toward the open doors. The darkness outside felt wrong, like it was waiting. After several long seconds, the doors closed again. The bus pulled away. I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. "What was that?" I whispered. The old man didn't answer. Instead, he looked back out the window. The thing was gone. I felt a wave of relief. Maybe it had finally stopped following us. Then I noticed something. The reflection in the bus window. I could still see myself. I could still see the old man, the passengers, the driver. But behind every single reflection, something impossibly tall stood in the aisle, right behind us. I spun around. There was nothing there. The creature wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. Then everything went completely dark. The bus skidded to a stop. For several seconds, there was only silence. When the emergency lights finally came on, every passenger was still there, except the old man. His seat was empty. The doors were closed. No one had seen him leave. It was almost midnight when Daniel finally pulled his camper deep into the woods. There were no other cars, no nearby houses, just trees stretching in every direction. He killed the engine and looked through the windshield. Nothing moved. Daniel grabbed his shotgun from the passenger seat. He always kept it nearby when camping alone. He stepped outside. The forest was completely silent. Then, a branch snapped somewhere behind him. Daniel froze. His flashlight moved across the trees. Nothing. He waited. Then he heard it again. This time, much closer. Daniel raised the shotgun. "Who's there?" No answer. He took a few steps toward the sound. That's when his flashlight caught something on the ground. Footprints. They looked almost human, but they were far too long. Daniel stared at them. Then he noticed something else. The footprints were coming from the forest and leading straight toward his camper. Daniel ran back inside and locked the door. He stood there, breathing heavily. "Okay, just stay calm." He grabbed his phone. No signal. Of course. Then something moved outside the window. Daniel slowly turned his head. He jumped back. The thing disappeared. Daniel grabbed his shotgun and aimed at the window. Nothing. 10 seconds. Then, a long scratch dragged across the roof of the camper. Daniel looked up. Another one. Scray. Apey. Whatever was outside was crawling across the roof. Suddenly, the radio turned on by itself. Then a voice came through. "Help me." Daniel stared at the radio. "What?" The voice came again. "Help." Daniel stepped closer. "Who are you?" The static suddenly stopped. Silence. Then something slammed against the side of the camper. Daniel pointed the shotgun toward the door. The handle slowly began to move. The door suddenly flew open. The creature was thrown backward into the trees. The creature was gone. Daniel looked into the darkness. He quickly got back inside and locked the door. He threw the shotgun onto the passenger seat and climbed behind the wheel. "Come on." He turned the key. The engine wouldn't start. No. Daniel tried again. Nothing. He looked through the windshield. The forest was completely dark. Then he heard something outside. A distant scream. Daniel froze. Only 2 shells were left. He checked his phone. Still no signal. Something scraped against the side of the camper. Then another sound came from underneath the vehicle. He didn't know if the creature was underneath him. He wasn't going to wait and find out. He slammed it shut and ran. He sprinted into the forest. Branches hit his face as he pushed through the darkness. He didn't know where he was going. He just kept moving. Behind him, something crashed through the trees. Daniel looked back. Nothing. He kept running. Then he heard it. A long, high-pitched scream. It was getting closer. Daniel ran faster. His flashlight suddenly flickered, then died. He was completely surrounded by darkness. He kept running anyway. His breathing became heavier. His legs were starting to give out. Then, through the trees, he saw something. Lights. Daniel stopped. For a second, he thought he was imagining it. A police cruiser. It was parked in a small roadside parking lot. Daniel felt a wave of relief. "Help!" He started running toward it. "Help!" The patrol car was only a few hundred feet away. He was almost there. Then he heard something behind him. It had followed him. He was only a few steps from the parking lot. "Help me!" Then his foot caught on a root. Daniel fell hard onto the ground. He tried to crawl forward. "Please." He looked toward the patrol car. No one came out. The red and blue lights continued flashing. Daniel turned his head. Daniel tried to get up. His leg wouldn't move. No.
Soviet Union, 1967. 10 years earlier, in September of 1957, an explosion at the Mayak nuclear complex released radioactive material across the southern Urals. The Soviet government kept the disaster secret. Entire villages were evacuated. Some were demolished. Others were simply erased from official maps. But there was one settlement that never appeared on the evacuation records. A small village called Kanka. It was located deep inside the contaminated territory, several miles beyond the areas that had already been cleared. Officially, Kanka had been abandoned in 1958. But in the summer of 1967, Soviet radio operators intercepted a transmission coming from the village. The message lasted only 11 seconds. A man's voice repeated one sentence, "We are still here." Then the signal disappeared. The Soviet government sent a small military team to investigate. Only 4 men, Major Viktor Sokolov, the commanding officer, and 3 soldiers, Sergeant Mikhail Petrov, Private Alexei Volkov, and Private Yuri Antonov. All 4 were armed. Their orders were simple. Find out who was transmitting from Kanka. The team reached the village shortly before sunset. Their truck stopped at the edge of the forest. Beyond the trees stood several dozen wooden houses. No smoke came from the chimneys, no lights, no people. Major Sokolov stepped out of the truck. He looked at the village. This place was supposed to be empty. Petrov checked the map. It has been marked abandoned for 9 years. Volkov pointed toward the road. Then who made those? Everyone looked down. There were footprints in the snow, fresh footprints, dozens of them. They came from the village and disappeared into the forest. Sokolov loaded his rifle. Stay close. The 4 men entered Kanka. The first house was unlocked. Inside, everything looked as though the occupants had left only minutes earlier. A pot sat on the stove. A child's coat hung beside the door. There were photographs on the walls. A sound came from upstairs. Everyone raised their rifles. Sokolov whispered, "Volkov, Antonov. Check it." The 2 soldiers slowly climbed the stairs. Sokolov and Petrov waited below. A few seconds passed. Then they heard Volkov's voice. "Clear." Sokolov lowered his rifle. The 2 soldiers came back downstairs. "Nothing," Volkov said. Then another sound came from the attic. This time, everyone heard it. Antonov looked up. That wasn't there before. They climbed to the attic. It was empty, except for hundreds of scratches covering the wooden walls, deep scratches. Petrov ran his fingers over them. "Animal," Sokolov shook his head. "No animal made these."
My first night as a security guard was supposed to be easy. The building had been abandoned for years. My only job was to watch the security cameras until sunrise. Before leaving, my supervisor handed me a flashlight, a radio, and a handgun. "If you see anyone inside," he said, "check it yourself first." Then, he locked the front door behind him. The first few hours were uneventful. Empty hallways, dark offices, nothing unusual. Then, one of the cameras flickered. A tall figure slowly walked across the hallway on the 3rd floor. I immediately switched to the next camera. Nothing. Then another camera. The same person, walking in the opposite direction. I checked every monitor. The figure kept appearing, always walking, never showing its face. I grabbed the radio. "Is anyone in the building?" Only static. I tried calling my supervisor. No answer. I watched the cameras for another minute. The figure stopped. Then, It slowly turned toward the camera. Its face was completely black. No eyes, no mouth, just darkness. The screen filled with static. I unlocked the security room. Flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. I followed the third-floor hallway. The building was silent, too silent. Then I heard footsteps, slow, heavy. Coming from around the corner, I aimed my flashlight. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. I turned around. The hallway behind me was empty. Then something breathed into my ear. I spun around. Standing less than 6 feet away was the same figure from the cameras. Only now, I could see its face. Its skin looked stretched over bone. Its mouth split open from ear to ear. Rows of impossibly long teeth filled the darkness inside. I fired once, twice, 3 times. The bullets tore through its chest, but it didn't even flinch. Instead, it smiled wider. I ran. Every emergency door was locked. Every staircase led back to the same hallway. No matter which way I turned, it was always behind me. I finally saw the front entrance. I threw myself toward the exit. I grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. Behind me, the footsteps stopped. I turned around. The creature was inches from my face. It whispered, "Your shift isn't over."
I moved into apartment 307 6 months ago. The rent was unusually cheap for the area, but I didn't ask questions. I was 24, living alone for the first time, and working remotely. The building was old, but it was clean. The neighbors were quiet. Everything was fine, at least for the first few weeks. Then I started hearing footsteps. Not unusual footsteps. These came from the apartment directly above mine. Every night, exactly at 2:17 a.m. The strange part wasn't the noise, it was the pattern. The footsteps always followed the exact same route. 5 steps across the living room, a pause, 3 steps toward what should have been the kitchen, another pause, then 7 steps back. Every single night, always identical. At first, I assumed it was an insomniac neighbor, someone pacing, someone with a routine. But after a month, I realized something. The timing never changed, not by a second. People don't move like that. I tried ignoring it. Then, one night, the footsteps stopped halfway through the pattern. 5 steps, pause. 3 steps, pause. Silence. I remember sitting upright in bed, waiting, listening. Nothing. The silence felt wrong. The next morning, I asked the building manager who lived upstairs. Then he checked his records. Nobody. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Apartment 407 had been empty for nearly 2 years. I didn't believe him. So that evening, I went upstairs. The hallway was empty. Apartment 407 stood at the end. Dust covered the door. No welcome mat, no decorations, nothing. I knocked. No answer. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. When I looked through the narrow gap beneath the door, all I could see was darkness. I went back downstairs feeling embarrassed. Maybe the sound came from somewhere else. Maybe old buildings carried noise. That night, I stayed awake. At 2:17 a.m., the footsteps began. 5 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. 7 steps. I grabbed my phone and ran upstairs. The sounds continued while I stood outside apartment 407. They were definitely coming from inside. I could feel faint vibrations through the floor. Someone was walking around in there. I raised my hand to knock. The footsteps stopped. Instantly, The silence that followed felt deliberate, as if whoever was inside had realized I was standing there. I went back downstairs. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I searched online for information about the building. Most of the results were boring. Property records, renovation permits, nothing unusual. Then I found an old newspaper article. 20 years earlier, a woman named Laura had lived in apartment 407. She had vanished. No signs of forced entry, no suspects, no explanation. Her disappearance was never solved. The article included a photograph, a smiling woman standing in front of the building. Behind her was a window. Apartment 407. I stared at the image. Something felt familiar. Then I realized what it was. The position of her body, the angle of her shoulders, the direction she was facing. It matched the pattern of the footsteps. I couldn't explain why that bothered me. That night, I recorded the sounds. 5 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. 7 steps. I played the recording over and over. Eventually, I imported the audio into a program used for editing podcasts. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe obsession. I zoomed in on the waveform, and that's when I noticed something. The pauses weren't silent. There was a faint sound underneath them. I amplified it. The result made my stomach drop. It was breathing. Not walking. Breathing. I was 19 when I accepted my first babysitting job. I found it online. The pay was almost too good to be true. $200 for just one night. When I arrived, a young couple welcomed me inside. The mother smiled. "Our son's already asleep. If he wakes up, just watch him through the baby monitor." The father handed me an envelope with half the money. "We'll be back before midnight." After they left, the house was completely silent. About an hour later, the baby monitor suddenly turned on. A man was standing beside the crib. He wasn't hiding. He was just watching the baby sleep. My heart started racing. I grabbed my phone and called 911. "I think someone broke into the house." The operator told me to lock myself in the bedroom and stay on the line. I watched the monitor. The man slowly looked up, directly into the camera. Then the screen went black. A few minutes later, I heard sirens. The police arrived. I ran downstairs and unlocked the front door. "They're upstairs," I shouted. "The baby's in the nursery." 2 officers rushed through the house. They searched every room, every closet. Finally, one of them came back downstairs. "There's nobody here." "What? The nursery is empty." I stared at him. "What do you mean? The baby's upstairs." The officer looked confused. "What baby?" "The little boy I've been babysitting." Before he could answer, a car pulled into the driveway. The same couple walked toward the front door. Relieved, I pointed at them. "That's them. They hired me." The officers stopped the couple. "Do you know this woman?" Both of them looked at me, completely confused. The husband shook his head. "No, we've never seen her before." "Stop joking. You left me here with your son." The wife frowned. "We don't have any children." I pointed toward the envelope. "The money. You paid me." There was no envelope. The officers checked the security cameras. The footage showed me walking up to the front door, taking a key out of my pocket, and letting myself inside. No one had opened the door. No couple had welcomed me. I had entered the house alone. The owners insisted they had never met me. They had never posted a babysitting job. One of the officers asked, "If there was no couple, Why did you call yourself a babysitter? I looked at him. Because they hired me. He stared at me for a moment. What did the baby look like? I opened my mouth, but I couldn't answer. I had never actually seen the baby. Not once. I had only ever seen the man watching the crib. The officer quietly replied, "Then how did you know there was a baby in it?" No one could answer that to this day. My sister disappeared 3 years ago. The police never found a single clue. Last night, while scrolling through old photos on my phone, I found a picture I didn't remember taking. The timestamp said it had been taken just an hour earlier. I thought it was some kind of glitch. Then I zoomed in. Someone was standing next to my bed. They were wearing a dark hoodie, and their face was hidden in the shadows. A chill ran down my spine. I looked around my room. No one was there. I tried to delete the photo, but another one appeared. This time, it was a picture of my hallway. Stood the same figure. I took a screenshot and called the police. While I was waiting, a third photo arrived. I dropped my phone when I saw it. The picture showed the figure facing the camera. It wasn't a stranger. It was my sister. And beneath the photo was a message. "Please, don't open the door."
My first night as a security guard was supposed to be easy. The building had been abandoned for years. My only job was to watch the security cameras until sunrise. Before leaving, my supervisor handed me a flashlight, a radio, and a handgun. "If you see anyone inside," he said, "check it yourself first." Then, he locked the front door behind him. The first few hours were uneventful. Empty hallways, dark offices, nothing unusual. Then, one of the cameras flickered. A tall figure slowly walked across the hallway on the 3rd floor. I immediately switched to the next camera. Nothing. Then another camera. The same person, walking in the opposite direction. I checked every monitor. The figure kept appearing, always walking, never showing its face. I grabbed the radio. "Is anyone in the building?" Only static. I tried calling my supervisor. No answer. I watched the cameras for another minute. The figure stopped. Then, it slowly turned toward the camera. Its face was completely black. No eyes, no mouth, just darkness. The screen filled with static. I unlocked the security room. Flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. I followed the 3rd floor hallway. The building was silent, too silent. Then I heard footsteps, slow, heavy. Coming from around the corner, I aimed my flashlight. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. I turned around. The hallway behind me was empty. Then something breathed into my ear. I spun around. Standing less than 6 feet away was the same figure from the cameras. Only now, I could see its face. Its skin looked stretched over bone. Its mouth split open from ear to ear. Rows of impossibly long teeth filled the darkness inside. I fired once, twice, 3 times. The bullets tore through its chest, but it didn't even flinch. Instead, it smiled wider. I ran. Every emergency door was locked. Every staircase led back to the same hallway. No matter which way I turned, it was always behind me. I finally saw the front entrance. I threw myself toward the exit. I grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. Behind me, the footsteps stopped. I turned around. The creature was inches from my face. It whispered, "Your shift isn't over."